My name is Robert Eustace. I was born on August 22nd, 1925 at St. Mary's Hospital in Stockton, California. Our family lived on a houseboat in Walnut Grove, just outside Sacramento on the River Delta. My dad was a commercial fisherman who was put out of a job when gill netting for stripers was replaced by sports fishing. Shortly thereafter, we moved to San Francisco on a paddle-wheeler boat. This is the height of the Depression, and my father's skills as a craftsman could not get him a job in San Francisco due to the fact that he wasn't a member of any union. Eventually, my parents divorced, and I lived with my mother. She became ill with tuberculosis when I was 12, so I was put in an orphanage for 2 years so not to contract it from her. When I was able to return home, I was sent to the San Francisco school system. Eventually, I went to Mission High School, where I graduated June of 1942 at the age of 16. I worked full-time at Western Union Telegraph throughout high school in order to support myself and my family. I didn't have time to have a girlfriend or attend any school functions. The week after I graduated, I got an apprenticeship from Kodak as a camera repairman. I wasn't going to be drafted since my job was considered essential for the war effort. However, with the patriotic atmosphere in the country, there's a great pressure and desire to serve my country. So after 10 months at Kodak, I joined the Navy in March 1943 at the age of 17. I was sent to Farragut, Idaho for 8 weeks of boot camp. Afterwards, while being assigned jobs in the Navy, I had 3 choices. So I chose photo school, sea duty, or sea duty. I didn't know anything about photography, but I just fixed cameras. But I'd gotten a recommendation from Kodak before entering the service with reports that said I was very reliable. The Kodak logo was probably the only reason they picked me over everyone else. I went to photo school with a small group in Pensacola, Florida. I was probably, in reality, the most qualified because I came with no experience. Others knew the right way to take pictures, had to forget it, and learn the Navy way. I came out of it at Petty Officer 3rd Class. Then I went to lithograph school in D.C. over Thanksgiving. After that, I was sent to San Diego to join the utility squadron, where I took aerial photos of torpedo run training missions. Finally, on January 3rd of 1944, I boarded the USS Swanee for my first tour of duty. My first operation was in the Marshall Islands, where I took pictures from the back seat of a plane during bombing runs. There's a rule about aerial photography. It's okay if you lose a camera as long as you bring back the handles. Kind of a joke. During the dive bombing runs, you will put a lot of G's as you're coming out of an 80-degree dive. For the photographer, it becomes extremely difficult to hold on the camera when everything is at least 3 times heavier. We were fired upon during these missions, but I was peering through the lens, so I was unaware of it. Sometime in June, the Swanee was attacked near Saipan in the Marianas Islands. I was on deck when a Japanese plane came straight for us in the pitch black night. I could hear the radar man calling off the closing distances to the ship. All of a sudden, the Jap plane appeared over my head no more than 50 feet away and turned to the bow of the ship. I realized he could fire at me, so I ran for the cover of the signal bridge. The plane had dropped a torpedo as I made it to the signal bridge. The torpedo hit the ship directly under where I was with a loud thud and dented the hull. I heard it hit the side a few more times before propelling itself along the side of the ship. If the plane had dropped it a moment sooner, the torpedo would have armed itself, and I would have been dead meat that night. On October 20th, we were in the Philippines when 2 enemy planes tried to attack our formation of ships but didn't do any damage. On the 25th, our formation was spread over about 30 miles from the next formation. We were attacked by a Japanese fleet. So we sent our planes over to defend them. That's when the kamikaze came and attacked our own formation. We were left with no planes to defend ourselves, so we only had anti-aircraft guns. The Japanese plane came over our stern and strafed the bridge. I dove for cover, and the plane flipped over and crashed straight through the deck. The wings broke off, and the fuel tank and 500-pound bomb burst through and exploded inside the ship, killing and wounding hundreds below deck and leaving a giant hole in our landing deck. We were patched up and landing planes again in about 45 minutes. The next day, I was heading up the deck when I realized I had forgotten my life jacket down below. I went back down and got it, and coming back up just as the kamikaze came in. I took 3 pictures of it as it approached. It flew right over my head and exploded on the deck, killing and wounding almost everyone up there. If I hadn't gone back for the jacket, I would have been up there right where it hit. Due to the flames and explosions, I had to go to the other side of the ship to get a clear view. As I stepped onto the deck, an explosion knocked me down and broke my camera. A piece of shrapnel caught me in the leg, and I had to go back down to get on the camera, so I slid down the ladder and sliced my hand on a damaged railing. When I got back to the photo lab and shut the door, everything was quiet. I grabbed another camera and was loading it up when my photo officer opened the door, shocked to see that I was still alive, and told me to forget the camera, come up and help fight the fire. I shouldn't have listened to him. It was my job to take pictures and record what was happening. In just those 2 days of kamikaze attacks, half our ship's complement was killed or wounded. I put down my camera and helped however I could to put out the fires. What I most regret is that I didn't get a single picture of the chaos on the deck as it was happening. The Swanee was severely crippled. It was the third most active carrier of World War II, taking part in every battle of the Pacific Theater so far, and after 2 days of attacks in the Philippines, we could not continue on in the Pacific. We unloaded our wounded onto a hospital ship and headed back to Washington in November. My ship was in Bremerton for 90 days for repairs. We sailed out for the April 1st invasion of Okinawa in 1945. Eventually, I was discharged on April 15, 1946. There were no celebrations when I got home. The memories were still fresh in my mind, so I traveled for 3 months to get my mind off it. Then my old boss saw me on the street and asked if I was coming back to work. Oh, I'll be in on Monday, so I went back to camera repair with Kodak. I met my wife Charlotte in 1950 at my sister's wedding reception and proposed to her 2 weeks later. We got married on March 24th, 1951. We have 2 boys and 7 grandchildren, and we've been together for 54 years.